2014, a 36-year-old man by the name of Hirofumi Watanabe was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. This man had been the sole culprit in an investigation that had been going on for 2 years. Criminals are pursued every day, but what stuck out about this case in particular was Watanabe's fixation on one individual. Tadatoshi Fujimaki, the author of the iconic sports manga Kuroko's Basketball. For 2 years, Watanabe would conduct a string of crimes that all revolved around Fujimaki, threatening business owners that dared to carry any media pertaining to Kuroko's Basketball, disrupting events that included the series in any way, and even targeting locations from Fujimaki's past, mailing a letter to his old high school containing a strange, potentially poisonous white powder, as well as leaving a bottle of toxic hydrogen sulfide in the gymnasium of Fujimaki's old university. Attached to it, a note that simply read, "I hate Fujimaki." Once the authorities were finally able to detain Watanabe, he was asked why he had such a fixation on Fujimaki, and Watanabe answered that he was jealous of the author's incredible success, and that Fujimaki had lived a blessed life, whereas he had never experienced anyone's love. If I somehow managed to harass and depress him, I could drag him into my journey.
Er gibt das sogar einfach zu.
So why are manga authors anonymous? I can't really seem to put my finger on it. It's just, oh man, it's just such a conundrum.
God.
If you follow anime or manga, you've probably noticed a trend by now that many manga authors tend to be pretty adamant about hiding their face and maintaining at least some level of anonymity. I mean, even an author as huge as Eiichiro Oda, the creator of One Piece, will still usually hide his face when he's doing on-screen interviews. Heck, typically these authors won't even represent themselves with their own faces, instead opting to have their identities associated with these silly little self-made avatars. Which, by the way, these are all really adorable.
Jetzt muss ich das Leben von Iñaki ruinieren, weil Oda getroffen hat.
After seeing what happened to the author of Kuroko's Basketball, it becomes pretty evident why an author might be adamant about staying anonymous, for their own protection from unhinged individuals. In this, let's just say, interesting era of social media, manga authors are no strangers to online harassment. And there's many examples. Kohei Horikoshi, the author of My Hero Academia, once had fans reach out and warn him when a crazed social media user threatened to visit his house, even giving a specific date when they were planning to show up. Hajime Isayama, the creator of Attack on Titan, once had over 1,000 death threats sent to him on his personal blog in 2013. And mind you, this was way before the series' controversial ending. And speaking of controversial endings, Gege Akutami. Oh my god, this poor man. I have so much sympathy for this guy. The amount of backlash, vitriol, and threats he gets anytime he does anything would break a weaker person. It's actually been speculated that this is one of the reasons why he decided to end JJK when he did. Not only for his physical health, but for his mental health as well. And if this is true, I really wouldn't blame him. I can't imagine how anyone would be able to keep their brain in a creative state of mind when they're constantly being hounded like this. But that also brings us back to the advantage of anonymity, in that it can actually help soften the blow of harsh criticism like this. As someone who makes YouTube videos, I myself get quite a few not so nice comments. I don't mind constructive criticism or when people point out mistakes that I might make, but some of these very clearly do exist just to make me feel bad. But I found it surprisingly easy to brush these off because they're basically coming from strangers that don't even know me. They're essentially meaningless. And this is how I imagine that many manga authors feel as well. It's just a lot easier to disregard stuff like this when you're able to separate your work from your personal life. Something that internet personas and anonymity allows you to do. and thus makes actually working and being creative a lot easier and manageable. It also just allows for a lot more freedom. You'll feel more inclined to write about whatever you want when you're not out in the spotlight and letting personal fame overshadow the actual work you put on paper. When you write with a persona, you're at least somewhat free of all prejudice and preconceptions. For example, look at Full Metal Alchemist author Hiromu Arakawa, or should I say Hiromi Arakawa. When Arakawa started out as a manga author, she knew that she wanted to write shonen, stories for young boys. However, in the manga industry, when you're a female, you're typically expected to write shoujo, manga for young girls. Because of this, she decided to adopt a more masculine name in Hiromu so that any young boys who saw her manga would give it a chance without judging it based on her gender. In some cases, authors even use pen names to indicate a collaboration. One of the most famous examples of this being Fujiko Fujio, the pen name for Hiroshi Fujimoto and Mato Abiko, the authors of Doraemon. I think in the entertainment industry, whether it's manga, movies, or video games, people prefer to look at one individual responsible for creating a piece of work. Clearly, it's not that simple, but people typically appreciate simplicity, and it's a lot easier to just say Fujiko Fujio as opposed to Hiroshi Fujimoto and Mato Abiko. So I'd say that that was pretty smart on their end, and probably a lot easier for their manga publisher. And while we're on the topic of manga publishers, they benefit from all of this as well. For one, when a manga author isn't a well-established pop culture personality, you don't really need to spend a ton of money on PR. That is, unless the author does something, you know, really bad and destroys their reputation. But even then, issues like these are probably a lot easier to mitigate or even sweep under the rug if your author isn't in the public eye in a substantial way, for better or worse. But that's a topic for another day. You know, let's move on from that. All you need to know is that anonymity has its advantages, and it's entirely logical to approach making manga this way. However, that's not to say that there aren't exceptions. One of the best examples of this being Hirohiko Araki, the author of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. He is no stranger to the camera, and honestly, I can't help but feel like he probably enjoys the attention to some degree. I mean, just look at the way he poses in so many of these photos, and he like always has a suit or some nice clothes on. Pretty fitting that the author of one of the flashiest mangas of all time also knows how to look good on camera. Then of course you have Ken Akamatsu, the author of Love Hina, who, and I kid you not, is actually a politician and serves on the Japanese House of Counselors. I gotta say, that's a pretty big leap from writing harem manga. So yes, the degree to which a manga author seeks out their anonymity certainly varies, and while there are exceptions, it's still very common across the industry, for good reasons as we've seen. However, while there are many benefits, I also feel like a big reason for this is because of Japan's culture in general. Japan is a nation where privacy is seen with great value. A lot of people just want to go about their business without fuss or hassle, and this is probably how many of these manga authors feel as well. Of course, the ludicrous amounts of money they make probably mean that they have an at least somewhat higher standard of living than most, but that doesn't change that many of them are just regular people going about their days, trying to live their lives as well as they can without disruptions. I mean, how would you feel if anytime you went to the grocery store, someone recognized you? I can imagine that it would be a nightmare for anyone who has even a little bit of social anxiety. And that's not even taking into account that many of these authors have families, spouses, children, parents, you name it. Fame is something that can easily affect not only you, but all of those around you as well. And that's kind of scary to think about. Drawing manga is just something that these people enjoy doing, and I imagine that many of them got into it without fully coming to terms with just how much this passion was going to completely change their lives, not only for the better, but the worse as well. When Tadatoshi Fujimaki was busy writing the draft for what would eventually become Kuroko's Basketball, the only thing he was probably thinking about was trying to make his manga as good as he possibly could. He probably wasn't thinking that someday some crazed lunatic was going to use his creation to threaten others. I mean, how could he? But that's exactly what happened, and it's sad to think about. That something like manga, a thing created solely to entertain and make people happy, can be twisted into something that others use to hurt or demean others with. including the
gemacht.
one who made it. I
Der
think
wurde
what I'm
einfach
trying to get at
gejagt.
here is that
Aber nicht so auf normale
manga
Art und
authors
Weise.
aren't
Der
their
hatte einfach,
manga.
Bruder,
They're
was
not
war
deities,
das?
they're not unknowable creatures that are
Einfach
above everyone
Netflix-Serie
else.
rausgemacht.
They're people. It's so easy to lose yourself in fame and the endless Ouroboros of negativity that the internet and society create. Some people really do just want to watch everything around them burn and collapse and drag you down with them into that inferno. And anonymity is something that these authors use to allow themselves to live a normal life with the ones that they hold the closest, free from pressure and free from fear.
Safe. Oder starkes Video, Alter. Ohne Witz, ich dachte, wahrscheinlich weiß ich schon alles, was er mir erzählen will. Aber Digga, diese Sache mit Kurokos Basketball. Holy shit. Das mit Isayama zum Beispiel wusste ich. Das mit Gege natürlich auch. Aber so Sachen auch zum Beispiel mit der Mangaka von Full Metal Alchemist, weil sie als Frau kein Shoujo-Manga zeichnet, sondern sich mal an Shonen traut, was mittlerweile einer der bestbewertetsten Manga aller Zeiten ist, beziehungsweise Serien. Und sie allein dafür Hass bekommt. Oder, Digga, ich komme nicht auf Kurokos Basketball klar, sage ich offen und ehrlich. Der wurde gejagt, aber so richtig mit Drogen und Tricks und Anschlägen und was weiß ich was. Das ist nicht normal. Heftig, wie manche Menschen einfach da draußen ticken. Real Talk. Starkes Video.